Albert Einstein. You hear that name, you pretty much think genius, right? But the real story of how he became this global icon? Well, it's kind of wild. He was a pacifist whose work helped create the atomic bomb. It's a way more surprising story than you might imagine. So let's get into it. Let's look at his journey from total obscurity to, well, a legend.
Yeah, you heard that right. Before the famous wild hair, before the Nobel Prize, the guy who had literally redefined space and time was a patent clerk. Just a junior civil servant sitting in an office in Bern, Switzerland, evaluating other people's inventions.
So how on earth does a guy like that become Einstein? Well, his journey doesn't start with some big, flashy moment of genius. Nope. It actually starts with a whole lot of academic frustration and, believe it or not, a struggle to even find a job.
Okay, so he graduates from this top-tier school, the Zurich Polytechnic. You'd think jobs would be lining up for him, right? But nothing. He couldn't land a university gig anywhere. Here's this brilliant mind with no lecture hall to call his own. So by 1902, he's got a young family to support, and he ends up taking the most practical job he can get, all thanks to a hookup from a friend's dad.
And this is where his life gets this incredible double life quality. His day job, looking at patent applications for electrical gadgets and stuff. But his side project? Oh, just completely redefining reality. In his spare time, sitting in a small apartment, he was running these thought experiments that were about to turn our entire understanding of the cosmos completely upside down.
And all that quiet contemplation, it just explodes in one single year, 1905. It's a year so famous in physics they call it his annus mirabilis, his miracle year. This is it. This is the year the patent clerk changed absolutely everything. So get this. In 1905, he drops count them, 4 separate papers in a leading physics journal. Any one of these would have secured a scientist's reputation for life. Einstein published all 4 within just a few months. It's just incredible. All right, so first up, he tackles the very nature of light. He basically proposed that light acts not just like a wave, but also like a particle, a tiny packet of energy he called quanta. This was a revolutionary idea, and it laid the groundwork for all of quantum mechanics. And here's a fun fact for you. This is the work that would eventually win him the Nobel Prize, not relativity. Kind of wild, right?
Next, he settles this huge debate that had been raging forever. Scientists had theorized about atoms for centuries, but a lot of them still weren't convinced they were actually real. Einstein's paper explained the jittery, random motion of particles in water by saying they were being bumped around by invisible atoms. And just like that, he provided the first tangible proof that atoms exist.
And then came the big one, special relativity. The story goes he had his breakthrough while riding a streetcar in Bern. He imagined what would happen if the streetcar was traveling at the speed of light. Looking back at the city's clock tower, its hands would appear totally frozen, yet for him on the streetcar, time would pass normally. His conclusion was revolutionary. Time and space are not fixed. They are relative to your motion.
As a short follow-up to his relativity paper, like a little add-on, he dropped a bombshell. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. It meant that mass and energy are 2 sides of the same coin. A tiny amount of mass could be converted into a staggering amount of energy. The world really had no idea what he'd just unleashed.
So suddenly, our obscure patent clerk is one of the most famous scientists in Europe, but his rising fame happened to coincide with the world descending into utter chaos, and his personal convictions were about to be put to the ultimate test. In 1914, he was lured back to Germany with a top post at the University of Berlin. He arrived right in the heart of the German Empire just as the assassination of an archduke ignited the First World War. The intellectual community was just swept up in nationalist fervor. 93 of Germany's top minds signed a manifesto supporting the war. But Einstein, a lifelong pacifist, he refused. Instead, he co-authored a counter-manifesto calling for peace and a united Europe. It was an incredibly brave and very lonely thing to do.
And even with a world war raging all around him, his mind was still on the cosmos. In 1915, he published his masterwork, The General Theory of Relativity. This is the one that described gravity not as a force, but as a curve in the actual fabric of space and time itself. I mean, truly mind-bending stuff.
After the war, Einstein's fame went global. He was a superstar. But as a new and, honestly, even more terrifying threat rose in his homeland, the committed pacifist would face the greatest moral crisis of his life.
When Hitler came to power in 1933, Einstein, who was Jewish, was visiting the United States. He knew instantly. He could never go back. He formally renounced his German citizenship for the second time in his life and took up a position at Princeton, becoming one of history's most famous refugees.
Then, in 1939, fellow scientists came to him with terrifying news. German physicists had discovered nuclear fission. They feared the Nazis could build an atomic bomb. So this lifelong pacifist made an absolutely agonizing decision. He signed a letter to President Roosevelt, warning him of the danger and urging the U.S. to start its own research program.
And the research he urged, well, it led to the Manhattan Project, and the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Einstein was horrified. He would later express profound regret, feeling his work had contributed to this new era of destruction. He spent the rest of his life campaigning for nuclear disarmament.
But beyond the bomb and that iconic image, Einstein's true legacy lives on in the technology that powers our world today, often in ways we don't even realize.
You use GPS to get around? You can thank his theory of relativity for that. It's essential for the precise timing that makes it all work. The photoelectric effect? That's the principle behind solar panels and the sensors in automatic doors. From nuclear energy to lasers to digital cameras, his abstract theoretical work has had these incredibly practical consequences.
And yet, despite all these monumental achievements, Einstein remained famously modest. He didn't see himself as some once-in-a-generation genius. He saw himself as someone who just never lost his childlike curiosity about how the world works.
He gave us a new universe, he grappled with the moral dilemmas of his own discoveries, and he became a symbol of intellectual freedom. His work didn't just change science, it really did shape the course of modern history. So, I'll leave you with this to think about. Was he the century's most influential mind?